And then the Nightmare Express bus pulled up. Apparently they got a good paint job from a deal on a paint job on the Lex Express. But now QT Marshall, Aaron Solo, Nick Comoroto, and Anthony Ogogo, fuck, they need to work on those names. They've stolen Cody's bus, and they pull up in the Nightmare Express bus for a 6-man tag, or as they call it on their television program, a trios match.
Why does Cody have a bus?
I didn't know he did until then. That's the first time I've seen the Nightmare Express bus. I thought the Elite had everybody gets, you get a bus, and you get a bus, and you get a bus. But this
he's not on the he's not on the road. There's Atlanta where he lives and Jacksonville where they tape this.
That's a good 4 or 5 hours apart. You need a bus to travel distances that great. But QT, of course, turned on the Nightmare family, Dustin and the Guns and old Shoddy Lee, and he took the students that they had never bothered to get over before until they exposed them as turning their backs on Cody. Otherwise, they were just nameless, faceless people. And now they're going to have a 6-man tag, Dustin, Billy Gunn, and Lee Johnson against QT and his guys, and a go-go on the floor, and immediately jumpstart. They went to a 6-way on the floor, and I defy anybody. I double dog dare you, go back and watch the video of this match. Immediately, Lee Johnson threw, I counted them, 18 completely fake punches to QT Marshall that barely touched him, that oftentimes touched his upper bicep, that many times missed him completely, obviously on camera, and QT, in selling those fake punches, never even went to a knee. He just stood there and got punched 18 times and then cut him off and run him into the rail. Comoroto looks like Hercules Hernandez without the talent. This match glowed green. It was chlorophyll green. QT Marshall's team, all of them have tremendous potential, and they badly need something like an Ohio Valley Wrestling television show for a year or so before they're on TNT. And that would have done a world of service to all these young men, but right now, this is brutal. I'm not saying this is a train wreck like the finest AEW segments aspire to be. It was just, this is rottenly booked indie wrestling with inexperienced and or lackluster talent. And finally, a go-go gut shot at everybody, and the heels won. And then there was an afterbirth. Explain this to me, Brian. The heels won with a go-go gut shotting people behind the referee's back. And then suddenly, all of QT's partners and friends and hangers-on, they left, but he stayed out there, and then Billy Gunn's kids jumped in the ring and beat QT up.
That's right.
And then all of QT's guys came back and got in a fucking fight, and QT ran off.
No, he didn't run off. He kind of stumbled off.
He stumbled off and stumbled and fumbled and fell off and got to the bus, and there was Cody on the bus, and they fought around the fucking bus. And I wrote, who's laying this shit out? They go to the top of the bus. Cody puts a figure 4 leg lock on QT on top of the bus and then lets it go. And then stands up and puts his hands in the air, and they go to a graphic because this is a taped show. And within 10 seconds, they have announced that Tony Khan has made the match for next week, and they've got a graphic. What the fuck? He didn't even have time to say the words, next week, Cody can wrestle, and that would... On top of the bus. This was such a mess. And these guys, and they're not teaching these green guys anything about positioning and timing and where to be, because everything is laid out like it's a fucking acid trip. And then the announcers made sure to mention that on May 12th, on the TV program, Moxley will defend not their championship, but the IWGP United States title against Yuji Nagata. And the announcers had to act like anybody but the fucking base AEW audience, and nobody else in the United States of America would have a fucking idea who Yuji Nagata is. And why would this be a thing that would get ratings past their base? Do you think everybody in that 880-something thousand people that watched last week, do you think even all of those people would have a fucking clue who Yuji Nagata is?
No, I don't think he's a commonly known name amongst American wrestling fans who aren't into Japanese wrestling.
And isn't he's got to be in his 50s. Has he not been around for 25 years?
Well, he was wrestling in WCW in the late 90s, so he has to be in his 50s.
So what? All right. Well, but before we even talk about who Yuji Nagata is or isn't, I didn't even ask you about, what did you think about Cody coming out of his own bus after it was stolen?
It was so ridiculous. First of all, you saw him in the window as QT was walking up. QT had to pretend like he couldn't see and he was looking down. You clearly see Cody calmly standing there like he's waiting to get off at his bus stop before that door opens. Shivani had to say something. It was so obvious that he was there. So then they start fighting, and of course, no figure four hurts as bad as the one on the roof of a bus. But again, the booking of Cody. Cody and QT, partners and friends. QT turns on Cody, breaks their school apart. He now has his own troupe. Cody's been gone the last several weeks because, every few months Cody needs another several weeks off. Cody now returns, and they're immediately going to the match. Next week on the show, they're immediately going to the match. Again, they have a pay-per-view coming up. There's no way you can't tell me it wouldn't have been better. They do it. I think at the end of May, they have a pay-per-view. You can't tell me if you have Cody now and you have a month to build into him against QT, you couldn't have done something for a few weeks on TV to build up that match. Promos, an appearance, a match, something. Instead of Cody magically, hey, where's the bus? The bus is gone. Can we find out where it is? It's in Jacksonville. Where could it be in Jacksonville? I'll just go there. I have a key. And then he gets on the bus and he waits for him and he beats him up. This whole thing is so stupid. This whole thing is so stupid. And you know what? When you think of the executive vice presidents, you're not a fan of the Young Buck style of matches. Would you agree?
I would agree with that.
You understand that there are fans that are. You agree.
For whatever reason.
Those fans who like the Young Buck style of match have been super served. They may have received, in the last year and a half or so, the greatest the greatest Young Buck matches of all time.
The Young Bungs. There's the name, the Young Bungs.
But you agree that the fans of the Young Bucks may have received the best Young Buck matches ever.
I will say that for all the fans of Olympic gymnastics and the uneven parallel bars and all that stuff that the cheerleaders do, that is the majority of the programming in this promotion.
Right. So the Young Bucks are doing everything they can to take what they were and turn it up a little bit. Would you say you could say a similar thing about Omega? You're not a fan of Omega and his style. There are people that are. And he's being Omega. He's being the best version of himself, of that he could be. He's super serving the Omega fans.
Yes. Sadly, I would agree with you that is the best version of him that he can be.
Chris Jericho, not an executive vice president, but has a lot of the voice, I guess, of an executive vice president. He gets a lot of his stuff on the air. Not my style of wrestling. I don't think it's your style of wrestling. But you would agree that it appears, although incredibly misguided, that Chris Jericho is constantly churning out ideas and trying to come up with things to do on TV. Although, again, misguided, awful, garbage, bad, drunken, whatever you want to say about these ideas, he's delivering ideas and he's getting on TV doing them.
They exist, and he has them.
So all of these guys, I'm not a fan of most of what we've just talked about, but if you are, you're getting exactly what you want, maybe more than you expected.
The one guy through this whole thing has actually, on the big shows, has delivered with great pro wrestling matches, even sometimes with overbooked finishes, but great pro wrestling matches and big moments on pay-per-view and in the ring, him and Dustin, whatever. He's hardly there. He's barely there.
He's never there, and when he is there, they rush through something. Brody Lee beats Cody and destroys the Nightmare family with the Dark Order. Cody's off TV. Brody has, especially now, a somewhat memorable run as TNT champion. Cody returns, instantly wins back the belt. That's it. Cody, remember, Sting debuted by interrupting Cody's interview. Remember, Cody, when Jade Cargill debuted, interrupted a Cody interview. And then, do you remember the afterbirth for that Cody interview?
Oh, good Lord. They went into some other piece of business involving other people, and Cody was just left standing there with his dick in his hand, wasn't it?
Wasn't it Cody got attacked by Team Taz? And then Darby Allin had to come out of the stands to save Cody. And then Cody was ready for his next thing, which was QT. Happens. Cody's off TV for weeks. He returns.
Well, wait a minute. When did Cody have the pull apart with Penta, old Penthouse?
That was like a 2-week thing.
Match.
That was a 2-week thing. That was the angle and then the match. I'll tell you, out of all the executive vice presidents, in terms of what's on the actual wrestling show, based on what you were before AEW and what you're delivering now, he's delivering the least. Because even the big shows, the Dustin match was a few years ago by this point now. The Jericho match early on was the first pay-per-view after TV started. The MJF program, I think they blew it. You know, it started out, it had a little bit of, where could this go? And then they killed it. Cody's done nothing. The Lance Archer program that started and ended.
And he's the one that we might actually be the most complimentary of if we got to see some good stuff from him, but he's the one we never see. We have to see these children force-fed down our gullets on every program.
It's like, you remember, like, Mid-South Wrestling started having a problem, and especially in, like, 85, where you'd see DiBiase and Dr. Death, and then they were gone because they were in Japan. Yeah. So when Watts had to start dealing, when all the promoters had to start dealing, well, other than Vince, with the Japanese commitments where some of your top guys would leave for several weeks and then come back and then happen again, you can only do so many injury angles. That's what it's like with Cody. Cody's there, he's gone, he's there, he's gone. He's never just there.
Well, let's talk about somebody that's just there. Explain the next thing to me. Pip Sabian and Bluto were in the back of the building somewhere, and Bluto in the locker room just snatched him, beat the shit out of him, threw him against the walls, slammed his arm in a door trying to break it, and then hugged him. And that's all we saw. When did they split up? Why did he beat him up? Why is he then hugging him after he beat little Pip up? What the fuck is going on here?
Not exactly sure. Obviously, Bluto is a deranged madman, which is why he beat him up and then hugged him. I believe there was a promo from Miro the week after the arcade romper room match or whatever it was, where he was disappointed with Kip. And somehow that led to this, where Kip goes in there with a flower or whatever the fuck he was doing, and Miro just kicks the shit out of him.
Grabbed him and kicked the shit out of him.